Welcome back to Bizarre, a Premier League season-by-season series where we take one moment or one theme from each campaign and we try to bring it back to life using cards, stickers and tickets. This time it's 2001-2 and we're going back to the 20th of April 2002 and a match between Leicester City and Aston Villa. A ticket stub from a match at Filbert Street. Leicester's final season at the ground after 111 years. A relegation already confirmed and a season that had gone badly wrong. A 2-2 draw between the team in 10th and the team in 20th, with no stakes, no drama and no apparent significance. On paper, there's very little here and not much space for it, given the size of the stub. It doesn't tell us what happened in the changing rooms, and it certainly cannot tell us what was happening in the stomach of Leicester City's number 8. This episode isn't about the match, it isn't about the table, and it certainly isn't about a classic. It's about Robbie Savage, and something that happened 10 minutes before kick-off. Robbie Savage is one of those Premier League figures who exists somewhat in shorthand. The peroxide hair, the confrontations, the bad challenges, the exaggerated falls, the arguments. He's always attracted moments. Falling over at the mouth of the St Andrews Tunnel before a match for Birmingham against Liverpool. Being accidentally elbowed to the ground by referee Matt Messias at St James's Park. They are self-contained. They require no knowledge of the match, the season, or even the teams involved. Savage appears, something ridiculous happens, and the clip ends. A career is compressed into a few seconds. But the most bizarre Savage episode came on that day at Filbert Street, before a ball had even been kicked. As we open the Premier League sticker album for the season, much of it feels familiar. The centre spread contains mini stickers, which were available in Walker's Crisps, while each club is introduced with a landing page and then 2 pages of player portraits. The significant change is that every portrait sticker now comes with a facsimile autograph. Savage can be found on the Leicester City landing page before appearing again in the player portraits. Each player was no longer just photographed and named. They had apparently signed off on their own small place within the season. The album presents Leicester in the same orderly way as every other club. A badge, a squad, a stadium. Everything neatly arranged, and everything still, apparently, intact. The season itself was rather less composed. By the spring of 2002, Leicester City were already down. It was a campaign that had unravelled quickly. 3 managers, little stability, Filbert Street nearing its end after 111 years. This is Savage's card from Premier Gold 2002, the corresponding card set for the season. It's cleanly presented, like the sticker album, but with some exciting new additions, patch cards, on-card autographs, and this Paolo Di Canio remains one of my favourite cards in my collection. Savage receives no card or autograph, no patch, just this conventional base card. A formal Premier League representation and photograph of a player who at that point was going through a much less orderly period of his life. In his autobiography, Savage describes real difficulties with his mental health. Relationships within the squad had broken down, and he had developed a growing dependence on routine. On the night before matches, he began sneaking wine into the team hotel, a full bottle every time. He admitted he was on the cusp of a drinking problem. But what's particularly revealing is the superstition which followed. Because his individual performances remained relatively strong, he began to believe that the wine was part of the equation, that without it he would not play well. He had begun to attach his ability to perform to a ritual he knew was unhealthy. Control, once lost, was being replaced with routine. Small acts repeated in the hope that uncertainty can somehow be negotiated with. Savage's appeared to be more damaging than most. The sticker and the card preserved the official portrait. Robbie Savage, Leicester City midfielder, cleanly photographed and placed within the structure of the season. But behind it, the club was collapsing, the stadium was closing, and the player himself was struggling. And by the time Leicester faced Aston Villa, very little was under control. Savage tells the incident better than I can, so I'll read an excerpt from his autobiography. This is what happened in April 2002 when Aston Villa came to Filbert Street. I was on antibiotics because of a cut on my leg that wouldn't heal. The medicine gave me the runs. I'd been up all night and I needed to go again. It was 10 minutes before kick-off, and the bell was about to go to signal the teams on the pitch. I was desperate for the toilet. Both cubicles in the changing room were occupied. I had the option of shitting myself there and then or running for another toilet. By this time, I was losing the battle to keep everything in, if you know what I mean. There was no loo in the physio's room, and the opposition's dressing room was out of bounds. What about the ref's room? I often watched reserve games, and as you walked through reception, the door to the ref's room would be open for anyone to use the toilet. So I knew there was one in there. I raced into the ref's room. I've got to use the toilet. I shouted as I headed into the cubicle. Graham Pole, referee, was sitting there with his two linesmen. I'd left the door slightly open, and I could see him from where I was sitting. The assessor came in. Pole glanced over to me and turned to the assessor. Guess who's in there? He pointed towards the toilet. Haven't got a clue, said the assessor. Everyone was laughing. I came charging out of the toilet because the bell had gone. I went up to the assessor and pretended to wipe my hands down his blazer. He laughed, and I admit I hugged him then. And no, I hadn't washed my hands because I was in such a rush. During the game, Pole was laughing and joking about the whole thing. He didn't seem angry or bothered at all about what happened. That night, it was the Player of the Year dinner, and Mickey Adams, Leicester City manager, pulled me to one side. What have you done? He asked. What? Graham Pole has made a complaint that you went into his room without permission and used his toilet. We're fining you 2 weeks' wages. You are joking. You can't do that, Mickey. The national newspapers broke the story. One of them called it Jobbygate, and Mum and Dad were able to read that I didn't wash my hands. Next, I had a call from the FA saying that I was being charged with improper conduct. I'd used a toilet in an emergency. This was nothing to do with football. I hadn't elbowed anyone, or been accused of breaking someone's leg, or spitting. I went for a poo, and there was no choice in the matter. What upset me was the way Leicester immediately said that they would fine me, even though they didn't have a clue whether I was guilty or not. I'm sure Mickey had nothing to do with it. I appealed, and in the end, they never received a penny from me. The FA was still to be £10,000 better off, unfortunately. I'd moved to Birmingham by the time the case came up, and Steve Bruce came with me to the disciplinary tribunal. It was a bit like Dad's army. Pole sat there and looked smug. He came out with a load of old bollocks, but he was their star ref, and I knew I would get done. They fined me 10 grand. 10 grand to use the toilet. It was unbelievable. In many ways, this incident says quite a lot about what Robbie Savage became. He has always been easy to misunderstand. Not because the public image of him was entirely false. Savage did provoke opponents. He did complain, exaggerate contact, and make himself generally difficult to ignore. The wind-up merchant was not simply a character invented by other people. He helped construct it. The mistake was not in noticing the provocation, it was allowing the provocation to become the whole player. Savage came through at Manchester United as part of the youth side associated with the class of '92. He started every match of their FA Youth Cup winning run, apart from the second leg of the final. At that stage, he was a forward. Injuries followed, opportunities didn't, and in 1994 he was released, believing he had done enough to earn another year. He had come through alongside players whose careers would become part of Premier League folklore. Savage remained part of the same youth story, but not the version which became famous. He wasn't the most elegant midfielder of his generation, and nobody mistook him for one. His value lay elsewhere. He covered ground, disrupted opponents, and competed for second balls, and sustained an intensity which managers repeatedly found useful. He rebuilt his career at Crewe, where he moved into central midfield, and then earned his move to Leicester in 1997. What followed was more than a decade in the Premier League. Leicester, Birmingham, Blackburn, Derby. 346 appearances at the top level. That longevity was not accidental. Different managers at different clubs kept selecting him because he could give shape and aggression to the midfield. The qualities which irritated opponents were often closely connected to the qualities that made him effective. Savage's career was no novelty act, nor does longevity alone prove greatness. He wasn't secretly one of the outstanding midfielders of the era, but there's a large space between greatness and irrelevance, and his reputation has not always allowed him to occupy it. Savage rarely kept much distance between the footballer, the performer, and the person, which is why this moment stuck. The toilet instinct contains almost every element of the Savage shorthand: a genuine predicament, a lack of inhibition, an ill-judged gesture, conflict with authority, a punishment he considered unfair, and years later Savage himself retelling it under the perfect description: the most expensive dump in history. He was both the subject of the joke and one of its authors. The incident came in his final season at Leicester, just before his move to Birmingham. And it also happens to coincide with my favourite Savage card. A foil from the Wizards of the Coast 2001-2 Football Champions set. A short-lived trading card game. Savage appears as one of 50 foils in the 250 card set, with odds of roughly 1 in 3 packs of pulling a foil. Within the internal hierarchy of a set, that matters to me. A foil is not simply another card. It's a player selected to stand apart from the base set, made brighter, scarcer, more desirable to find. Savage shares that treatment with some of the league's more established names. There was also a mid-season expansion set, Title Race, featuring first card appearances for Jermaine Defoe and John Terry, alongside this beautiful early Steven Gerrard foil. The box is also interesting as well, featuring Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, Gary Speed, Marcus Stewart, and Ted Sheringham. The booster packs carry Thierry Henry, Michael Owen, Rio Ferdinand, and Fabien Barthez. Together they represented the product's idea of the Premier League: established stars, unexpected success stories, and an increasingly cosmopolitan kind of glamour. Savage certainly wasn't among them. But although later memory has often placed Robbie Savage among the Premier League's comic supporting characters, this card preserves a slightly different judgment. Probably not one of the elite, but certainly important enough to shine. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Bye-bye.